A very good afternoon to all of you. I'll just wait for a couple of minutes for you all to join and then we shall start with our session for today. Meanwhile, those of you who have joined, if I am audible and visible well, please raise your hands. Please give me a thumbs up. Okay, wonderful. So I'll just take one more minute and then we shall start. Welcome back, everyone. So today we are starting with our next module in science and technology, and this module is about robotics and artificial intelligence. So first up, I'll tell you what exactly are we going to do in today's class, and then what are the topics that we are going to do in tomorrow's class. So there are a couple of chapters which are left, or almost five chapters almost which are left, and these are the chapters that we are going to cover in today's and tomorrow's class. So first and foremost, we'll begin with robotics and artificial intelligence. So this will be the first part of our discussion. And then after that, the second part of the discussion will be about health and diseases. We'll discuss about that. We'll then also have a discussion on vaccines. We'll understand various aspects of vaccines. And then after that, we'll move on to topics which are defense. So maybe these are the areas that we are going to cover in today's class. If time permits, then we shall start with the next topics as well. Otherwise, for tomorrow, there are two more important chapters which are left, and these are chapters of intellectual property rights and IT and communication. So, these are the things that we are going to discuss in this particular lecture in this weekend. Right. So, let's begin with our session. So, first topic that we are starting with is robotics. Now, first and foremost, understand the value of this particular chapter from the perspective of your mains and prelims examination. Now, compared to a lot of different chapters that we have discussed, I would say that robotics as a chapter perhaps is not that important, all right? Not as important as some of the other chapters that we have studied. Although, when we go to artificial intelligence, I would say that artificial intelligence as a chapter is a lot more important today as compared to robotics. The reason also is very simple, that why exactly do you feel that robotics as a chapter is not important? If you look at the last 15 years of question papers also, you'll find that 15 years combined, there is no question in the prelims examination, and there's just one question in the mains examination. 15 years combined. And that's why I believe that even going further, there are only few topics that, if at all they have to ask, they can ask from, and those are the areas that we are going to cover. And all because it's a part of your syllabus, it's written in your syllabus, so we cannot just neglect the chapter because questions haven't come in the past, right? So first and foremost, also understand the reason that why exactly do we see that there are no questions being asked from here. It also is something to do with the policy that the government of India has had, that we have seen that even if you look at the last 30 years or last 40 years of development, because these are the years when we have seen robotics as a sector develop in this world. And when the robotics was being developed, and we see that there are various parts of the world where they have taken some form of policy or the other to ensure that they can start working with robots, understand what robots are and how they can be useful in the industries. But in India, we have seen that there hasn't been any such policy undertaken by any government in the past 30 odd years, because there is also a fear with robotics. And the fear associated with robotics is that it may so happen it may so happen that robotics can lead to job losses, right? It it may so happen that robotics might lead to job losses. And it's not a misplaced fear. It's not a misplaced fear. We know that this is something which is possible, that in the industries wherever you have a lot of people being employed in any mechanical process, we know that machines can probably replace the human labor in these kind of scenarios. Any scenario or any such condition where application of human brain is not required, and there's only a mechanical work that is supposed to be done by anyone who is working in these areas, in all these cases we know that robotics can actually work there. And any robot or any mechanical system, any machine, can actually replace that human labor in these kind of areas. And that is why there is a fear among people as well, that when robotics are being used everywhere in the industries, people might start losing their jobs. So that's why we see that from this perspective, this has been a case where policy wise also the governments have been afraid of adopting robotics as a part of their policy, and hence we see robotics did not really develop a lot in India. So first and foremost, we'll discuss about robotics and what exactly do we mean by robotics, what is the meaning of a robot, and what is this entire field associated with the design and the structure of robots. Now, when we say that something is a robot, a general understanding of a robot is that it will be a walking, talking, humanoid form of machine that will do any kind of job for you, right? Any kind of work for you. So how exactly will that work be done? On the basis of the inputs that you have provided. So based on the inputs that you give to the machine will be able to perform certain tasks, and these tasks will be mechanical form of work. Mechanical form of work meaning wherever some kind of movement is required, that if have they have to go from one place to another, or they have to just carry some load and place it somewhere, or maybe pick something up, maybe product inspection. So all these kind of things, wherever some kind of mechanical work is being done, some kind of movement or motion is involved, these kind of cases we see that a mechanical uh, machine called as robot could be very very useful. So robotics, that's why when we define robotics, what we say is that it is an interdisciplinary sector of science and engineering dedicated to the design, construction and use of mechanical robots in various fields. And the robots will basically be called as the intelligent machines that can sense and manipulate their environment. All right. So now when it comes to robots and robotics, basically when we say robotics is nothing but the study of robots, study of the mechanical robots. And what are robots? Robots are mechanical systems or mechanical machines that can do any kind of work on the basis of input that has been provided to this robot. So this is how we in general can define what robotics is. Now, when it comes to robots and robotics, first and foremost, there is something that we must know, and these are the three laws of robotics that was given by Isaac Asimov. Now, Isaac Asimov, first and foremost, was a very interesting personality, because he has been somebody associated with science, although not associated with robotics, not associated with the branch of robotics. He's somebody who was more associated with the study of biochemistry. Now, but although he had a different field of study, what we find with Isaac Asimov is that Isaac Asimov had written a lot of science articles, lot of science based articles, and also a lot on the future of science, a lot on the future of science, a lot of science fiction as well. So we see that he actually had written a lot of such articles. There are more than 500 such articles that have been published in the name of Isaac Asimov. Even book wise, we see that there are a lot of science fiction books also that he has written. If you go to any e-commerce website like Amazon or Flipkart, etc., and you just type Isaac Asimov, you'll see that a plethora of books will come in which are all related to some kind of technology future. So he was the one who had suggested three laws of robotics, because at that point of time robotics was just starting to develop. These machines for the first time were just being constructed. So that's why he was looking into a future of when robotics actually will be used very widely in maybe a lot of industries. Then when such a scenario arises, when a lot of industries are using robots, then in that case what are the basic principles on which they should work, what exactly they should they try to manage. So there are three laws that he had suggested. The first law says a robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm, meaning that it should neither attack, let's say, strong word, but let's say neither a robot should attack a human being, nor it should just sit idle when a human being is in any kind of harm. So neither it should harm the human being, or through its inaction it should not even let the human being to come to harm. So basically this is the basic idea, or basic principle on which the entire field of robotics is based, that robots are here to help, right? Robots are here to help the humans, and they are here to do different types of work to humans, for humans, and especially for those kind of areas where you are doing some kind of work which could be even harmful for humans to work in, the conditions which are not safe conditions to work in these kind of areas. We see that this also becomes a very very crucial law to follow. And that's why when we talk about these three laws are not really laws in the same sense that you see the laws in physics, or the laws that you see in any kind of science. These are laws which are more, I would say, are more of a guideline, right? These are more like guidelines for the industries, that if you are an industry which is working with robots, which is going to manufacture robots, then these are the guidelines that you must adhere to while uh, making any robot, or while manufacturing, creating any robot. So this was the first law. The second law says a robot must obey the orders given to it by human beings, except when such orders would conflict with the first law, meaning that if a human being is giving any kind of input or any kind of instruction or order to this robot, then the robot must follow those orders, right? Robot must follow those orders. But but if those orders are to harm somebody else, if those orders are, let's say, to attack somebody else, then in that case the order must not be followed. Now, looks very bizarre that okay, fine, we are saying that something like this should happen, but when you look into the technicalities of these three laws, they become very very crucial, because whenever manufacturing of any robot happens, they always take care of these kind of facts, that they would program robots in a manner that they do not become aggressive towards a human, they do not become aggressive towards somebody who is working with the robot in the given scenario. So that's why these are guidelines which are very strictly followed, or rather laws which are very strictly followed in the manufacturing of the robots in any industry. But you cannot really say that that is the case every time. Let's say if there is a country which is making a robotic army, then in that case they are simply in conflict with the first law or the second law, correct? That they are first of all going to harm somebody, and they are going to take those instructions from someone to harm somebody else, correct? So then in that case neither the first law is applicable, nor the second law is applicable. Both of these laws are being violated. But essentially what we see is that depends on the various different types of uses that we have for the robots. And yes, if it is actually being used in defense, and a country or an organization is actually making a robotic army, then in that case it completely goes in a different direction, opposite direction to what it was originally intended for, correct? Then, talking about the third law, the third law says that the robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or the second law. Again the same thing, that preserve yourself, protect yourself, but while preserving or protecting yourself, you should not be harming another human, right? So this is the third law that was suggested. But there are instances that we have seen, and you might have read it in the newspaper articles here and there, that there have been instances of aggression shown by the robots against humans. right? That there was, I think, a news that when uh, a person was playing chess against a robot, and the robot was losing that game, robot had become aggressive against that human in that given scenario. So that's why we can't say that something like this hasn't happened or can't happen. It can happen, just that while we are designing or constructing a robot, we have to take care of the fact that we do not let the things go in a completely different direction. All right, but we do know that all these things are actually possible, and there, all these three laws that we have, these three laws can be very easily violated. Now, coming to the robot, and now the next thing for us would be to try and understand what exactly is a robot. How do we see a robot? What are the basic components of a robot? So let me explain this to you with the help of a diagram. Look at this picture. Now, this picture that you see right here on the board, this I would say that this is a typical picture of a robot. I know this is not how you imagine a robot when you think of it, but this kind of a system, this kind of a machine, which has this kind of a setup, will be called as a robot. And what exactly is happening in this machine? Let's try to find out here. So first and foremost, what we see is this is the most important part of this robot, called as the controller. For controller, what we say is that controller is like the brain of the robot. It is like the brain of the robot. Why do we call it as a brain? What is the function of brain in our body? What, according to you, just in one sentence, if you could tell me, what is the role of brain in our body? Action governing, gives command. Both of the answers are fine. Do give instructions, yes. Control and coordinate all the functions of the body. This is a precise answer, Asif. Great. Storing things, that's also correct. So basically, when we talk about our brain, the basic role of the brain is to control and coordinate for all the activities of the body. So whether you are talking about storing things, whether you are talking about giving instructions, whether it is about governing the actions, as you all have suggested, all of these is correct, but precise way to put it would be to control and coordinate for all the functions in our body. So what exactly does the brain do? The brain is also connected to the sense organs, right? There are these sense organs that we have. What are, there are five sense organs. Can you name them? Let's keep going. Can you name these five sense organs? So we know that the brain is connected to these five sense organs. Yes. So correct. Eyes, nose, ears, tongue, skin. So these are the five sense organs that we have. Why do we call them as sense organs? Because these are the organs that are connected to the outside world, to the external world, right? So whether it is our eyes or nose or ears or tongue or skin, they basically are connected to the external world, and whatever they see in their surroundings, right? Whatever information or whatever they see in their surroundings, all that information will be passed on to the brain, right? All this information will be passed on to the brain, and then brain will decide what to do with this information and will give instructions based on the inputs that has been provided. So same is the role of a controller, and not only in case of robots, but even let's say controller, that we controllers in general, we see that these are processors or microprocessors that might be present in any computing system. So whether it is your mobile phone or your laptop or any computing system, we do see that there is a controller there. So for example, something that you call as the central processing unit, or CPU in case of a computer, that also basically has the same job. Similarly, in the mobile phones also, there will be processors and controllers that will do a lot of different types of jobs. Here the controller will be connected to a sensor. It will be connected to a sensor, and these sensors are like the sense organs. These sensors are like the sense organs. So basically, this is what will happen here, that just like how sense organs are able to collect the information from the external world and pass it on to the brain, similarly here also we see that the sensor will collect the information in its surrounding and pass it on to the controller as an input, and then the decision making will happen in the controller, and an output will be generated out of this particular input. So based on the inputs that have been provided by the sensor, we see that the controller will take the decision and then instruct the robotic system to do something. So then comes the role of the actuator. For the actuators, what we say is that actuators are like the muscles of the robot. They're like the muscles of the robot. Now, again, what is the role of the muscles in our body? And why do we call this as a muscle? What do muscles do in our body? Okay, movement, correct. Facilitate easy and smooth movement. Fine, good. Help for movements of body, correct. Supporting movement to lifting heavy weights, okay. Part of the job, yes. All right. So more or less, the answers that I'm getting, more or less, all of you agree that it helps in movement, right? But there is one more part to it, that this movement happens with the help of conversion of the energy through nutrients that you're getting. So the role of muscles is to basically take that energy, or the energy that you have gotten through your food, convert that energy into mechanical movement, all right, to any kind of mechanical work. So any kind of movement or any motion, voluntary or involuntary, in our body will be done with the help of the muscles. And for that, muscles would convert the energy that it is getting through the nutrition into some kind of mechanical work, right? So this is the role of the muscle. Similarly, here in case of actuators as well, we see that actuators also play a very similar role. All right. So in case of actuators also, we say that it plays a very similar role. Why I'm saying this is mainly because actuator is that part of the robot that would take the energy from the batteries or the electrical power source, whatever is the power source. All right. So it will take the energy from the power source, the electrical energy from the power source, and convert it into mechanical energy, or convert it into a mechanical work. So the electrical energy is being taken by the actuator, and a mechanical work is being done by it. So that is the role of an actuator. Then after that, we have the manipulator. Now the role of the manipulator basically is that it acts like the arm of the robot. It acts like the arm of the robot. So just like how we have our arms, which helps in the movement of the hand, that similarly we have this manipulator which will help in this movement of this end effector. So end effector is like the hand. End effector is like the hand of the robot. So it will be helpful in picking things, placing things, grasping, product inspection. All these things can be done with the help of this end effector. So that's why we say that end effector is like the hand of the robot, and manipulator is like the arm of the robot. So these are some of the basic parts, basic components of a robot, and these basic components make up for all the work that a robot does. So first and foremost, we have the controller. So it is the part that controls all the movement of the mechanical system, receives the input from the immediate environment through various sensors, and then it will take a decision based on that. So this basically, that's why we are saying that this is like the brain of the robot. It is like the brain of the robot. Then we have the actuators. So where we know that it converts the stored energy into movement. So basically what is happening here is that electrical energy is converted to mechanical work. And that's why they are also called as the muscles of the robot. Then after that, we have the manipulator. So manipulator, as we discussed, that it is like the arm of the robot, correct? It is like the arm of the robot. So it will help in the movement of the materials, parts, tools, or special devices through various motions to provide useful work. All right. So that's why any kind of movement that has to happen, we see that manipulator will play a very, very important role there. Then we have the end effector. So end effector, as we had discussed, it is like the hand of the robot. So that's why the purpose of grasping, lifting, transporting, maneuvering, performing operations on a workpiece, all these things can be done with the help of the end effector, which is like the hand of this robot. And then we have all the sensors. The role of the sensors would be to gather the information in the surrounding areas in its vicinity. So that is the role of the sensor, and that's why we are saying that it is like the guide or like the sense organs that we have in our body. So it has a very similar role for a robot. And then lastly, you would definitely need a power source. It could be a battery, it could be an electrical supply. Although electrical supply will normally not be used because you need some kind of movement in both in a lot of cases of robots. So largely we see that if because movements are required, electrical connectivity can't be the best way. That's why we see that batteries will be connected. We'll see that the batteries will be connected, and hence in this particular scenario, the battery, it could be a rechargeable battery, it could be any kind of battery which will be connected to the robot, so that it is getting all the power that is required for its functional functions. So in this manner we see that these become some of the basic components of any given robotic system. Now, overall, when it comes to the robots, we understand that there are various different applications that we have for the robots. And wherever in any way machines can be used for the movements, and wherever, let's say, if there are scenarios which can be dangerous or harmful for humans to work in, then in that case we see that we'll always prefer robots. So there are multiple different ways in which robotics can be helpful. There are multiple different scenarios, multiple different sectors where robots can become very useful. So the first such sector can be military application or defense. Now, in case of military applications, we know that there are various different types of robots that we can construct, whether it is a search and rescue operation, whether it is required for transportation, whether it is required for any kind of military task, or even if you want for attacking the enemy. So for any of these purposes, whatever we wish for, we can actually use robotics for that. And that's why in case of especially defense, we see that there are a lot of ways, there is a lot of scope where we find that robots can be very, very useful. Now, this picture that you see right here on your screen, this is the picture of a robot that has been developed by DRDO, and the name of the robot is Daksh. This has been designed and constructed by DRDO. So this Daksh that we have in India, this is a search and rescue operation robot. All right, it is a search and rescue robot which has been designed by DRDO. So that's why we see that, and similarly in other parts of the world also there are some robots which are very, very useful in these kind of operations. Then coming to the industrial applications. So in case of industrial applications, we see that robots become very, very useful in a lot of industries. For example, let's say welding or assembly or picking and placing things in painting, packaging, labeling, product inspection, testing. In all these cases, we can make the use of robots. So that's why we see that, especially in the industries wherever any kind of automation is happening, or any kind of automation is being expected, then in all these cases all the automation will be done with the help of the robots, because these robots will be able to understand the systems well, and they can work accordingly. So that's why in any kind of automation in any industry, we might see that the manufacturing sector could use these kind of robots. This picture that you see right here is the Skara robot. This is the Skara robot, and this Skara robot also has been one of the most popular and most widely used industrial robot. It is more like a robotic arm. It's like a robotic arm that can work on various different types of work pieces. So that's why we see that Skara robot has become very, very popular here. Then, in case of agriculture, also we understand that there are a lot of ways in which robotics can help agriculture, because In case of agriculture also, we do understand that there are a lot of ways in which mechanization of agriculture can be done. And if we are able to use robotics well, we would be able to increase our productivity with agriculture. But then, so, and there are a lot of ways in which in agriculture we can use it. So whether it is about harvesting or seeding or soil analysis, environmental monitoring, for weed control using the drones, in all these cases we know that in farming or in agriculture we can make the use of robots. And that's why there are multiple different ways in which robots can be useful here. We already see that there are some countries which have been using robots. They have been using robots for some kind of agricultural activity. And with the help of robots being used in these activities, we also see that we are able to decrease the demand for human labor in these kind of sectors, and also increase the productivity at the same time. So it basically is about lowering the operations cost and increasing the value of production. So there are countries where we see that in agriculture we are using robots. But in India, we see that more or less robots are not being used in agriculture. Because first and foremost, we also understand that there's a big there is a big bunch of employment that actually happens in the agriculture. A lot of agricultural laborers are employed in agriculture in India. And if, let's say, this opportunity does not exist tomorrow, and all these agricultural laborers, if they are replaced with a machine like a robot, then in that case a lot of people are going to lose their jobs. Now in this scenario, there is one thing that you also have to understand, that when it comes to the sectors in India, you talk about the primary, secondary, and the tertiary sectors, meaning agriculture being primary, let's say manufacturing being secondary, and service sectors being tertiary. So if we talk about agriculture versus manufacturing and service sectors, we see that in India, agriculture employs a lot more people. All right, it employs a lot of people. But when you look at the contribution in the Indian economy, you might find that the contribution of agriculture is little lesser as compared to manufacturing, or for that sense, the service sector. So what happens because of that is that there is a disbalance between number of people being employed are more, and the output that you're getting from this sector are low. But if we start looking at things from this perspective, it can lead to a very dangerous trend where a lot of people might start losing their jobs. So that's why we see that for the fear of all these things, largely we haven't really taken anything which can hamper any kind of employment opportunities in India. So that's why these kind of decisions haven't been taken by the government. So that's why, although in agriculture we can make the use of robots, but we do understand that because of certain complications, we don't want to venture into robotics in agriculture. Then in medical science, in case of medical science also, we understand that there are different medical robots that we have. So for example, there can be surgical robots, rehabilitation robots, uh, telepresence robots, or bio robots. So there are multiple different types of robots that we have. But largely when it comes to the surgical robots, this is the most important part, because we have seen that in lot of surgeries which can go on for hours, to provide that precision in surgery for a very long duration, for a very cumbersome surgery, we see that now robots can be useful. And there are many robots across the world that have been designed in a manner that they'll be able to help in surgeries. So that's why we know that there are different ways in which in different types of surgeries these medical robots would be useful. Again, in India right now we haven't really seen in a lot of hospitals, but we do see that there are hospitals which have started using these kind of robots. So many of the private hospitals, especially, we see that the biggest of the private hospitals in India, we have seen that they have started employing some of these systems that can assist the doctors in any kind of operation. So that's why in case of surgeries, we understand that robots actually can be very, very useful there. Then there are robots which will be called as nano robots. So nano robots, or what we also call as nanobots. So when we talk about nano robots or nanobots, we understand that these are nano sized robots. These are these are nanosized robots, meaning that they are nanoparticles. If you remember, In last class, we had discussed about nanotechnology, where we had discussed that these particles or these nanoparticles, nanomaterials can be used in drug delivery, right? We know that they could be used in drug delivery. So they can be used in drug delivery. They can be used even in, they can also be used even in treatment of cancer. So it can be useful in treatment of cancer as well. So these are called as nanobots because these are nano-sized robots. So these are nano-sized. These are nano-sized robots, or you can say in a manner nanoparticles or nanomaterial, let's say. They are nanomaterial. So that's why we see that these are nanorobots or nanobots. Then in outer space application. In case of outer space applications, also we see that robots actually can be used. Do you know the name of this robot? Anyone who knows the name of this robot displayed here on your screen? Looks like Sophia, but it's not Sophia. This is the robot that we intend to carry in our Gaganyaan mission. The name of the robot is Vyom Mitra. This is a robot that will be carried as a part of the upcoming Gaganyaan mission. All right. So that's why just remember the name because it will be useful. The plan that we have for the Gaganyaan mission, that there will be two unmanned missions and then there will be a manned mission. Then in that case, we see that this robot is going to accompany people in the mission, plus the unmanned mission that we have before the human space flight is taken. In the unmanned mission also, this robot will be sent. So with this, we basically are trying to understand the technology and what are the key challenges that we would face with a robotic system being placed in your Gaganyaan mission. So that's why we see that these are some of the applications of robots. And what happens is that once we are able to use robots in space technology, what then can happen in the future is that we might see that if, let's say, ISRO plans an outer space mission, a deep space mission, where we are going away from the solar system or towards the end of the solar system, then in these kind of cases, robotic systems will be very, very useful because we can send these robots on board to carry on various different types of operations, and we'll be able to go forward with these kind of systems in a much better manner. So that's why we actually can do all these things as well. So so that's why a future deep space mission may be possible because of these kind of robotic systems that we are building today. So some of these application areas, of course, this is not the end of the list of the various applications that we have for robots, but we do understand that robots actually can play a very, very important role in the future. Now, coming to India, and what we started our discussion with was also this, that when we look at the developments regarding robots in India, we find that we haven't really done a lot. Correct? We find that we haven't really done a lot, and not a lot of development has happened in India with regards to robotics. And because of one basic reason, that we fear that there will be a lot of losses in employment opportunities because of robots, which, as I told you, is not a misplaced fear. There is a possibility that something like this might happen. So what are the key challenges that India has been facing where we see that growth of robots have not happened? First, lack of hardware ecosystem. Lack of hardware ecosystem, that meaning that if we want this industry to be scaled up, all right, if we want that more and more robots should come in this industry, and more robot should be designed, then in that case, first and foremost, we need to have that hardware. the plastics required, the metals required, and all these things out of which you'll be making those robots, we need to have that hardware ecosystem. Otherwise it is going to be very very costly to manufacture the robot. So that's why first is this problem that we'll have to take care of. Then the second problem is with regards to any kind of financial incentives, because in India there is no incentive being given for using robots. That even if, let's say, a private company chooses to use robots for its operation, this is not going to be backed up by India. This is not going to be backed up with financial incentives or tax concessions, etc., because it has been very clearly kept out of any kind of such policy. So that's why there are no financial incentives even for the companies to work with. Forget about, let's say, government of India taking some kind of uh, some kind of initiative, but we see that even private companies may not want to come in this, because since the time of development of robotics over the last, let's say, 30 40 odd years, they haven't seen any government who has been backing them to start using robots a lot. So that's why this also becomes a challenge. And then lack of required knowledge. Now this also is a big challenge, that we lack in experience, right? We lack in experience, and we lack in expertise. That if we want that this needs to develop, or this entire field needs to develop, then for the development of that field we would need that you have enough experience and you have enough expertise in this particular field. Not only that, we also see that there is no real academic support to robotics. So for example, let's say if you think of your class 10th, or maybe even if you have taken science until class 12th, it's not that you have read about robotics, right? uh, there is no chapter on robotics, there is no discussion on robotics. So, and even after that, unless there is somebody who has a specialization on certain branch of engineering, otherwise they would not know what robotics is. Maybe if you are from electronics engineering background, or mechanical engineering background, or computer science engineering background, then only perhaps partially you might have studied about robotics. Otherwise others would have no idea about what robotics is. So that's why the problem is that it is deeply specialized, and unless somebody has actually shown interest in robots, they would never even come to know that there is something called as robots beyond what the movies have shown us, right? So so that is where the problem lies with robotics, that it had to be a part of the curriculum somewhere. Maybe just a very very basic introduction to robots, maybe in class 9th or 10th, or even at least for the students who have opted for science in class 11th and 12th. So that's why, if because if you want to generate human resource, this is the first way to do it, that you start teaching people, start training people. And once people are trained, once they are taught about all these things, then of course they would also start showing some interest. That if, let's say, there were a lot more students exposed to robotics early in their study, maybe until class 10th or even in class 11th and 12th, chances are higher that they would want to pursue robotics if it so generated any kind of interest in their minds. So that also is a big challenge, that there is a lack of knowledge that we have with robotics, because there is no support as such or training as such that we have been going through in India. So that also actually becomes a big challenge. Apart from the challenges that we see in India, there are some concerns regarding the field of robotics itself. These are some of the technical challenges. In a manner, we can say that these are some of the technical challenges or concerns that we have with regards to robotics. So, try to understand what are exactly these challenges. So, first is that new materials and fabrication schemes, meaning that we need new material and fabrication schemes that can take care of this branch of robotics. Because until now the problem is largely we are using metals or maybe plastics, etc. Now in all these cases, if you want to scale up the industry, it's not a viable option that you will be able to do everything with the kind of materials that we are using today. Because in future then you will start generating a lot of waste, which will be very very difficult to dispose of. So that's why new material and fabrication schemes are required, so that this can be sustainable. All right, this can be sustainable, and help in easy waste management. All right, help in easy waste management. Then after that, biohybrid and bio-inspired robots. So when we say that something is a bio-inspired robot, it means that it is inspired by nature. Inspired by nature. Now, basically, what we can do, and we actually do this a lot of times, that we try to mimic the nature. Maybe mimic an animal, mimic an organism where we see that, let's say, they are able to conserve their energy well. So we need to understand how are they able to conserve their energy, and maybe we can find some way in a very similar manner to even conserve energy in a robotic system. So that's why when we say bio-inspired, we are saying that this is inspired by nature, maybe some other plant, some other animal, etc., which can give us a hint about something that can be utilized in robotics. So that's why these kind of robots will be called as bio-inspired robots. Similarly, we have bio-hybrid robots. So in case of bio-hybrid robots, we see that there is a very different manner in which we try to produce a hybrid between a biological material, or let's say an organism, and a robotic system at the same time. So that will be called as bio-hybrid robots. So we probably will need more of these robots, because ultimately they help in a sustainable way of growth in case of robotics. Then power and energy. Why we are basically talking about power and energy is because robots would consume a lot of energy, right? All right. So what we see is that these robots, they actually consume a lot of energy. So that's why we need to have batteries, or we need to have power supply which can be efficient, and it will be able to last longer. Otherwise we'll be using a lot of electricity, and it will create a kind of a new problem for the world, because already we know that, so there is so much concentration, there is so much pressure on the concentrated energy supplies that we have. So that will further start to become a problem. Then robot swarms. Now when we say that something is a robot swarm, the meaning of robot swarm is when you are using multiple robots in a given scenario. So when you are using multiple robots simultaneously. All right, when we are using multiple robots simultaneously, we see that robot swarms are actually created. So now what why we are talking about robot swarms is because there are a lot of applications, a lot of different types of work which can be done by robots. In all these cases, we see that not one, but there are multiple robots that will be functioning together. Now for all these multiple robots which are working simultaneously in a given space, they also will have to ensure that their sensors are good enough. The sensors are able to interact well with one another, so that the information can be passed on from one robot to another without any glitch, without any problem. But we see that this is a very, very difficult challenge to come across. So what we basically see here is that for multiple robots to work simultaneously, we need reliable sensors. Right, we need reliable sensors that can interact among one another. Reliable sensors that can interact among one another without any glitch or delay, without any glitch or delay. So this is basically something that we will need for for the robot swarms to work well. Then navigation and exploration. So when we say navigation and exploration, the meaning of navigation and exploration here in this particular scenario is that we would basically need the navigation of this robot to be very precise, because many a times these robots perhaps will have to move in a given situation, in a given environment. Oh, sorry, I have written with. This has to be without. Thanks for pointing it out. So without any glitch or delay, right? So the next topic is the next point is navigation and exploration. So navigation and exploration is more about the movement of the robot. That if, let's say, the robots have to move in a given place, then in that case their navigation should be very very precise, so that they are able to navigate through the given scenario. Otherwise they would not be able to function properly. So that also is a big challenge, the precision of the navigation and exploration. Many times we see that is it's a very very big challenge for any robotic system. Then artificial intelligence for robotics. This is something that we see as a new development, that over the last, let's say, last, especially last 5 years or so, we have seen that there are so many systems where artificial intelligence is used along with robots, right? So that's why now we need to introduce more of artificial intelligence into robotics, so that robotics can function in a much better manner as compared to whatever we have right now. All the manual controls, if it can be replaced with artificial intelligence based systems, we perhaps might see a much better functioning of the robot as compared to what we see today. And then we have some brain computer interfaces. Now these brain computer interfaces, again, we have seen that already, we have been using it. It's not that we haven't been, but we need more of these systems. So when we say brain computer interface, it simply means that our actions might be able to control the robots, our thoughts can control the robots. So that's why we are saying it's a brain computer interface, that will be able to control the computer or control the robot with our brain. So that is called as brain computer interfaces. And we have seen some examples in some parts of the world where we see that the brain computer interfaces are actually being used. So that's why brain computer interface also is a very important design or a part of the issue that we need to solve. So that's why so where we are talking about controlling robots with our actions, right? Controlling the robots with our actions or with the help of our brain will be called as a brain computer interface. Then after that, we see that there is one more problem that we have to see through, and this is the problem related to social interaction. Because what we generally see, or what we would see in the future, is that once you start employing a lot of these systems, they will also restrict the social interaction happening among the users, or happening around among the people who are working in a given scenario. So in this particular scenario, what then happens is that it might lead to problems, it might lead to certain problems where we may see that people are not really interacting among themselves, and that also leads to some kind of uh, lack of respect or lack of coordination among people. So we have to ensure that even if these machines are being used, the people who are controlling these machines, who are using these machines, they do not lose their contact, they do not lose their touch, because then after that the further development of these kind of fields will be hampered. Then we need better medical robots. We discussed that one of the applications is medicine, and there are very few hospitals in the country right now which actually would use a robot for any kind of surgery, or let's say any kind of work. So this is where we see that we need to develop more medical robots, because they will be very, very crucial in the entire healthcare sector. Then robot ethics and security. Now, in case of robot ethics and security, we understand that there is a situation where these robots can also be misused. And if these robots are being misused, this is where we are talking about the robot ethics, that sometimes the things, the way they are working, the way the robots are being programmed, might not have been done in an ethical way. It might not have been done keeping in mind the work balance or any kind of problem that they might create. So that's why they can become a security threat as well. And many a times robot, the ethics related to robots will also be violated. So we need to keep a very, very close watch to all these kind of situations, so that we can avoid them if in case such something like this happens. Then occupational safety and health implications, and this basically is about the people working in these industries. People who are working in these industries, for them it can sometimes be an occupational hazard. We have seen the acts of aggression that has been shown by robots in certain cases. So that's why we have to be very sure that the programming of the robots have been done in a manner that it is completely safe, there is no issue that it might cause. So that's why this is also one of the concerns that we have. And then lastly, trying to build multifunctional robot, where you have a robot that can do multiple tasks. One robot capable of doing multiple tasks. So in such a scenario, we say that these are multifunctional robots. And we, when we are looking at a growth of this sector, when we want the growth of a sector like this, we would need multifunctional robots more, so that you are being effective in any kind of work that we are doing. So that's why we understand that there is a requirement that we start moving towards this, because these kind of cases will be very, very difficult to design. They are going to be very complex systems and not very easy for anyone to even think of building a multifunctional robot. So that's why we see that there are all these concerns that we have with robots in one place, one way or the other. And if we are looking towards a future of robots and the development of robots in one way or the other, we understand that these concerns have to be addressed, and then only we'll be able to move towards a better future. So looking towards the future of robotics in India, that if we want a better future, if we want to develop a future of robotics in India, there are certain things that we will have to do. There are certain steps that we'll have to take. So just try to understand what are these steps, what are these things that we have to take. So first and foremost, identification of the first wave technology. Now, when we say first wave technology means that we need to identify where to begin from. We need to understand where to begin from. So unless because unless we are able to figure out a way in which we can find or identify one sector where we want to introduce robotics, we would not be able to grow further. So for example, let's say, so that is what first wave technology is. So let's say if you consider mobile phone, so in case of a mobile phone, which today has become a smartphone, so in case of a mobile phone, what we see is that the first wave technology would be simple, that it should be a machine that should be able to help you talk, even if you are not at home, even if you are not sitting beside your telephone, still you'll be able to communicate with anyone you want. So so that is basically what we want out of a mobile phone. This is how it started. But today it's a completely different story. Today I don't think that you even think of whether it will have voice clarity or not while you go to buy a mobile phone. So identification of the first wave technology. We need to identify where do we want to begin from. All right. Which sector do we want to introduce robotics to? All right. So first wave technology basically would be sector where we want to introduce robotics. So maybe it could be defense, right? Defense, because first of all, there is no employment opportunities that will be hampered if in defense we are using robotics. Plus, we also understand that robots, the use of robotic systems will be able to provide us some very, very important advantages in even border management and surveillance, etc. So that's why we can perhaps use defense as the first wave sector or technology from where we might be able to then build up in different kinds of industries as well. Then optimization of resources, optimization of the hardware resources or any kind of resource that is uh, required in the manufacturing of the robots. So that is something that we'll have to do if we want to scale it up. If we want to build a future with robots, we'll have to start thinking about this. Then similarly, improving the productivity, improving the productivity of any given robot, or if any given sector, any given work, wherever we want to introduce robots, we need to improve upon the productivity of these robots as well. So they should not be wasting a lot of time, they should not be wasting a lot of energy. So all these things will have to also ensure. Then we need more and more of industrial robots in those areas where robots actually can become very, very useful. We have to introduce them in these kind of areas. Then providing an academic support, something like something what we discussed, that it's not that it has a lot of academic support, it's not that we see this getting any kind of weightage in the curriculum, whether at school or at college level. So that's where something has to be done here, so that people at least have a very basic the students basically have a very basic introduction to what robotics is. At least that much should be done, so that if, let's say, if it interests somebody, then perhaps those students might want to go in those kinds of fields of engineering where they can study about robots. So that's why there are all these things that we'll have to do. Then a deep specialization in server engineering, electrical, embedded programming, and mechanical engineering is required. That even in the areas where already, let's say, in the colleges, we are being taught about robotics, still in those cases we perhaps need a better methodology. We probably need much more comprehensiveness. So that's why we are talking about deep specialization, that we need a better specialization just than having a normal knowledge about it. And then lastly, the safety and the quality of the products, each and everything that is using robotics, how exactly do we ensure the quality in all these cases. So all these are the areas that India will have to work on if we want to build a future of robotics in the country. So overall, not a very big chapter, as I told you, but there are certain areas from where questions, if they want to ask, they can ask. Technically, I think that questions can't be asked from here. So maybe in the prelims examination, chances of a question coming from here are little on the lesser side. But if at all questions have to come, I believe personally that there are higher chances that we get a question in the mains examination rather than prelims. So that's why these are all things. For example, future of robotics in India can become a question in itself when it comes to your mains. Similarly, the concerns, similarly the applications, so all these things can directly become a question in your mains examination. So that's why what I believe personally is that this becomes a topic more important from the mains perspective than prelims perspective. So a small chapter, but nevertheless a chapter that can be important. So, any question if you have, anyone has any doubts with regards to whatever we have discussed with robotics, please let me know. Sir, may you please explain the navigation exploration concern? So, what we are basically saying is that many a times the navigation meaning how it would navigate in a given scenario. So suppose, for example, let's say it was a classroom that we were sitting in, and instead of me standing in the classroom, there was a robot taking your class. So now this robot has to move through the rows and columns in this classroom. So it's not going to be very easy for that robot to do so. Maybe let's say I am standing on a podium at a raised surface. So then it also has to identify where the steps are so that it can step down and maybe move all across the classroom. So we don't really know. We see that it actually becomes very, very crucial for us to design something with which has a very strong, very precise navigation system, so that it does not see any kind of issue as such. Oh, so one more question is, what is cobot? So the concept of cobot basically is, I mean, you can say in a manner, this is co-robot, meaning we are talking about people who would be able to work along with robots. So this is a concept that is being introduced in the world right now, where we are talking about people working alongside robots. This basically is about people working alongside robots. So basically, the fear that we have that people will be replaced with robots, we basically see that this is a concept where we see that there are people who would work along with robots, the people who would be managing those robots. So those kind of concepts, in that scenario, it is called as cobot. The first point, when we are talking about the first wave technology, so first wave technology basically is the first sector or the first use from where you want to begin. So for example, we need to find that this is one particular use, this is one particular application where we must introduce robotics. So you need to have to first find that particular application area and start using robot in that area first. So that's why I gave you the example of mobile phone, that for a mobile phone, first wave technology would have been to ensure that people could talk on the phone while they are outside their homes. Future in India, point two. So point two basically is about optimization of resources. Optimization of resources in terms of how exactly all the resources that will be used in the manufacturing of a robot, how do we optimize it so that we can control the prices, we can make cost effective robots, and the entire operation does not become very costly. So for that particular thing, we will need optimization of resources. Can I get a single PPT for science and tech printing purpose to revise? This I'll check with the team. If they can do something like this or not. Otherwise, I think module wise it's already available, so even that can be downloaded if you want. Right. So I think this is the end of the first chapter. So because it's a the chapter end, let's take a small break and let's come back on the other side and start with our next chapter, that is artificial intelligence. The time right now is 1:10. So let's take a small 10-minute break only and let's be back by 1:20 p.m. Welcome back, everyone. We start now with our next chapter, and this is artificial intelligence. Now, as a chapter, artificial intelligence has no mention whether in your prelim syllabus or in your main syllabus. But I think today it goes without saying that probably this is one of the most important chapters for your examination. Because look at the way the world has grown, look at the way artificial intelligence especially has grown over the last, not 50, not 100, but just last 5 years, and how we have seen a sudden shift in the manner we see the world and technology because of artificial intelligence, and how artificial intelligence has grown so quickly. So in this chapter, I mean, when we go back into the history of this chapter, obviously this is a very new setup of this chapter. So not a lot of previous year questions have been asked from here. There's one question that was asked in your 2019 or 2020 paper in the prelims examination. That's it. But in the future, we expect a lot more. In the future, we expect a lot more questions to come from this particular segment, and this segment should become very, very important for your upcoming examinations, both at prelims and at mains level. Now, in this chapter, first we'll try to understand what do we mean exactly by artificial intelligence, what are the key technologies behind the working of artificial intelligence, and then certain key concepts and classification of artificial intelligence, then going into the applications of artificial intelligence, and then lastly, some of the issues that we are facing, the concerns that we have with regards to artificial intelligence. So that's why these are the things that we are going to cover in this particular chapter of artificial intelligence. Now, first and foremost, what do we mean by artificial intelligence? What is the meaning of this term artificial intelligence? Now, there are two words that we have here, artificial and intelligence. What do we mean by the word artificial and why intelligence? So, when we say intelligence, so when you say that somebody is intelligent, what do you mean by being intelligent? That they perhaps are sharp in studies, maybe. So, they have very good thinking ability. They might have very good cognitive ability. They might have a very good decision making ability. So in these kind of cases, this is what we associate with intelligence. All right, so these are the cases of intelligence. Wherever you see that there is some kind of good cognitive ability, there is some kind of good decision making ability, some kind of thinking ability to think, perceive, and to act properly, in all these cases we might associate all these traits with intelligence in humans, right? Similarly, or let's say in animals also, in plants also. So we say that it is intelligence when they have this kind of cognitive ability, they have some kind of thinking ability, or they know how to act or how to comprehend and to think. Now, when we say artificial intelligence, it simply means that when you are trying to get all these traits in some kind of machine, maybe into some machine, maybe into some software, when you want all these abilities to be there in that machine, it will be called as artificial intelligence. So when the machines are able to think, when the machines are able to sense, to comprehend, and to act, they are able to make decisions, they are able to uh, uh, take decisions, let's say, or they are able to think clearly on their own. In all these cases, it will be called as artificial intelligence. Now, in case of artificial intelligence, what we understand is that there are a lot of ways in which artificial intelligence is working today. We find that there are a lot of ways in which artificial intelligence is helping from the biggest of the sectors to the smallest of the sectors, right? We see that it has been helping in a lot of different ways, it has been helping in a lot of different cases. So that's why we see that artificial intelligence today almost has been trying to capture each and every sector related to technology. And we do see that whether it is the biggest of the application area to the smallest of the parts of your life, everywhere today artificial intelligence in one form or the other is definitely being used. So for example, let's say if we talk about weather monitoring, today we see that the weather predictions are much more precise as compared to what they used to be. That the weather department will give you an idea about what to expect over the last or over the next couple of days, which states are going to which states have the chance of receiving rainfall, what are the states where temperatures might be uh, very high during summers, which are the states where some kind of flood warning has to be issued. We see that each and everything related to the weather reports, day to day, hour to hour, minute to minute weather reports are being given with much better precision today as compared to what we used to see. So that's why we do understand that here the world has changed a lot, and the precision has, the accuracy has increased a lot. That 10 years back, if let's say the weather department says that today it's going to rain, you probably can go out in the sun without thinking of any problems. But that we used to joke around that if they are saying that today it's going to rain, probably today it's not going to rain. But those things have completely changed, that if they are today predicting that, they are going to be very very accurate and precise about it, because artificial intelligence immensely has helped them in making that data much better, and to take that data, to understand that data, and also to comprehend that data in a much better manner. So that's why we understand that today precision has increased here, because otherwise weather is a very complex phenomena. It's not just one aspect or the other, not just one factor or the other. There are so many things that contribute to a day to day weather, that it's very very difficult for somebody to predict what the weather would be, with even all the technologies that we have, and even with the best of the best uh, artificial intelligence also being employed here. So that's why when all these things were not there, it was very very difficult for us to predict. So we have seen that in this scenario it has helped. Similarly, in image processing we have seen it has helped. We receive lakhs of images from all the satellites that we have placed in the orbits. So managing those images, those videos, processing them very very quickly, predicting something based on all these images being received, we see that artificial intelligence has helped in all these cases, in image processing altogether. So we see that there are a lot in healthcare, in agriculture, there are so many ways in which artificial intelligence has been helping. So there are a lot of sectors which are going to benefit, which have been benefiting, but which they are going to benefit a lot in the coming future as well, with regards to artificial intelligence. So that's why we understand that artificial intelligence from this perspective becomes a very very crucial part of technology of the future. This is one side. Then the smallest part of your life as well, we see that everywhere artificial intelligence has just taken over. Any mobile phone application that you're using, more or less I can say, goes without saying that at least the biggest one of them, the famous ones, they are using artificial intelligence in one way or the other, to maybe enhance their performance, maybe to interact with the customer better, interact with you better, or maybe to even get your data, understand your data, so that they can model their application in a manner that you would always be hooked to those kind of applications. So we have seen that all these things actually are a part of today's setup. So for example, uh, if I ask you, why does Instagram have to have reels, or why does YouTube have YouTube shorts? So the reason why these two have these kind of platforms or these kind of services available, because they also realize that today's world is a world where the the capacity to hold the information for a very long time, to concentrate for a very long time, has been decreasing in the people. And that's why probably a 3 hour lecture is not something that you'll sit with. Instead, if the same lecture on artificial intelligence could be delivered through a reel within a minute, you would really like that. So we have seen that this kind of capacity in people all across the world has been decreasing, and this is what they have been trying to tap into, because they also realize this. They have their analytics that keeps on working all the time in understanding the human behavior, in understanding the customer behavior, and hence they would design the systems in a manner that you would be hooked to it a lot more. And that's why they'll take all these things into consideration. So that's why we see that all these apps that we have, they would try to interact with you in all these cases. Similarly, there are so many things where we see that they actually have been changing the world, understanding the data of the customer, and the things have just started to take a shape. With, for example, generative AI now in the picture, we see that the artificial intelligence, what we knew until now, has now also started to change. You might have heard of Chat GPT. So if you've heard of Chat GPT, that was introduced last year. Heard of this Chat GPT? This was introduced last year in the month of November, And since November, we see that there are so many ways in which now we see that chat gpt has been functioning. There are so many tasks that this kind of a generative ai would be able to perform. And with the newer versions that are being introduced now, we see that the newer versions have even better capacity as compared to what the older versions were capable of. So that's why we see that very quickly these kind of things are changing in the world, and they are basically capturing a large part of technology. With that, we also see that it's not only about the fact that they are going to help and they are helping in a lot of ways. We also see that they have deep negative impacts as well. One of the negative impacts that we have seen over the course of last, let's say, 6 to 9 months is so many of job losses happening in the tech sector. So many job losses happening because there are so many works, there are so many things that are being automated by the companies. They are using these kind of platforms, these kind of technologies, and instead of that, the people who are working where you needed large workforce to work on a certain work, that's not even required anymore. So we do see that these kind of changes have been happening, and that's why, although there are a lot of positive impacts, but we do see that there is a kind of negative impact also that it has on the world. There have been lists that have been published in certain researches that was done, that which are the jobs that are going to be secured and which are the jobs which are going to take a very negative hit because of artificial intelligence. And the biggest of the jobs today probably will not even be required tomorrow once artificial intelligence starts to uh, get into all these fields. So that's why we understand that artificial intelligence can change the world for good. It already has started changing the world for good. Now whether it goes in a positive direction or a negative direction is up to us, because ultimately we are designing these systems, we are running these systems, and that's why we have to decide what kind of future do we want with artificial intelligence. Otherwise we already see chances of it also going in a very negative direction. At the same time, we do see that there are so many applications where artificial intelligence has been very very useful. So that's why artificial intelligence today, we see that now it has started to just develop. What do we mean by artificial intelligence? How do we define it? We can say that it refers to the ability of the machines to perform cognitive tasks like thinking, perceiving, learning, problem solving, and decision making. In another word, another set of words, we can say that these are constellation of technologies that enable machines to act with higher levels of intelligence and emulate human capability of sense, comprehend, and act. And another way to put the same thing would be that it can also be applied to any machine that exhibits traits associated with human mind, such as learning and problem solving. Correct? So basically, we are, in simple terms, we are talking about the cognitive abilities, developing artificial cognitive abilities in machines. Correct? So cognitive abilities in machines is what we are basically talking about. So when they are able to solve a problem, think, comprehend, act on something, process some information, all these things basically will be called as artificial intelligence. Now when we talk about this artificial intelligence, there is a basic system according to which it works. That it If we talk about this artificial intelligence, largely it is made of machine learning. And then there is a deep specialization that has been done in machine learning, which is called as deep learning. And then there is another term that we are going to discuss where it helps in the working of deep learning. It is called as neural network. So we'll try to understand what these terms mean. That what do we mean by machine learning? What do we mean by deep learning? And what do we mean by neural network? So these are the things that we have uh, as the basics of what artificial intelligence is. Now, today, what we see is that artificial intelligence is about developing those cognitive abilities. So, there we see that machine learning becomes the base of those learning abilities. So, when we say that something is machine learning, it is the ability of the machine or ability to learn without being explicitly programmed. Now, this is where you need to understand the basic difference between a software versus artificial intelligence. Because you might feel that, okay, there are so many softwares also that are working, that are able to give me results. So, are they also based on artificial intelligence? Is everything based on artificial intelligence? The answer is no, they are not. Because we see that when it comes to artificial intelligence, it's more about data recognition, it's more about understanding of the patterns than anything else. Let's say you have a calculator, all right, you have a calculator, and you go to that calculator and you type 2 plus 2 equal to. So as soon as you type 2 plus 2 equal to, you press the equal to button and it will give you the result as 4. All right, this is a typical machine which is a calculator. Now let's say you have a calculator which is working on machine learning. Then in that scenario what happens is that if let's say you have typed 2 plus 2 equal to 50 times or 100 times or maybe 200 times, the machine starts to learn this pattern. If it is based on machine learning, it will start to learn this pattern. And what will happen in the future is that as soon as you start typing, you just type 2 plus, it will start showing you the result, or it would start uh, to ask you or suggest you that is this what you want to write, that it will start to autofill the rest of the things, that the machine now understands that there is this weird person who likes to type 2 plus 2 equal to all the time. So it has recognized this pattern now, and it is able to it is able to uh, give you results accordingly. And this is something that we see everywhere. So for example, let's say in your mobile phones also today we see that there are so many autocorrects. So autocorrects initially were just softwares, but now we see that these autocorrects are also based on artificial intelligence. Depending on your typing pattern, your language usage, etc., we see that they can actually start understanding your pattern and they can start suggesting you accordingly. Similarly, if you write emails, in the emails also you'll see that something like this works. That if you write an email, if you go to Gmail for example, you start typing something in the email, you'll see that they start suggesting you, that you give the first part of the sentence, they'll ask you or suggest you the second part of the sentence. Why? Because there are so many users, there are millions of users across the world who are using this Gmail, correct? And that's why Gmail collecting and collating all the information that it is getting everywhere, understanding the patterns, the typing patterns of people across the world, it understands or recognizes this pattern. And recognition of this pattern leads to this kind of a suggestion. So that's why we understand that there are so many things that can actually be done with the help of machine learning, where machine is learning the input, learning the pattern which is being used in designing any system. So that's why this is called as machine learning. So instead of hand coding the software libraries with well defined specific instructions for a particular task, the machine gets trained using large amounts of data, and algorithm, and in turns gains the capability to perform a specific task. So this is what I was telling you, that when you keep giving is feeding it all the information, it will keep getting all that information, it will try to process all that information, and while it has been able to process that information, it will be able to give you the output. So that's why we see that this is what machine learning is, that machine is trying to learn, you are training the machine with the data with regards to a certain kind of work. So in all these cases, these are the cases of machine learning, that you just keep feeding the data and it will try to understand that data and recognize a pattern in that data. Then after that, we have deep learning. Now, deep learning is also, you can say in a manner, essentially machine learning only, with one difference. The difference is that it's much better as a system as compared to machine learning. Because in case of machine learning, what we have seen is that in machine learning, we have to feed a lot of data to machine learning systems so that they can understand that data and they can start recognizing the pattern in that data. With deep learning, we have seen that the data pre-processing requirements are lower, that you know, even if you don't feed a lot of data, with smaller sample size of data also, it will be able to understand and comprehend that data very well, and maybe with even a much better accuracy at a faster rate, at a faster pace as compared to machine learning. So it's a better specialization, a special specialization that we have done in machine learning. And with this specialization, now we see that the accuracy is better, we see that the pace is better, and we see that the data pre-processing requirements are lower as compared to machine learning. So that's why it is a type of machine learning that can process a wider range of data resources, requires less data pre-processing by humans, and can often produce more accurate results than traditional machine learning approaches. So that is what is being called as deep learning. That deep learning is nothing but a much better specialization in machine learning as compared to the normal machine learning systems. And today again we see that a lot of ways, a lot of different companies and a lot of different sectors, they are using deep learning in their applications. Now these deep learning systems, what we see is that they are based on something called as neural network. All right, they are based on something, largely they are based on something called as neural network. Now when we say neural network, neural networks, we are saying that it is nothing but a bunch of neurons, that there is a network of neurons that are working. Now neurons, we know that neurons are also present in our body, correct? We have neurons or the nerves that we have in our body. What exactly do the neurons do? What is the role of these neurons in our body? What is the basic role that they perform for us? Anyone quickly? Okay, transfer of message, that's correct. Transmitting data, yes. Transmit the impulse, right? Perfectly correct. So more or less you get the idea. So what is the role of neurons, or what is the role of the nerves in our body? That they would send and receive the information that they have received. So they'll always be interacting with the entire nervous system, especially with the brain, and they will provide the information to the brain, and they will get the information from the brain. So that's why there is a dense network of neurons in our body that basically functions in finally understanding the data and taking the decision, correct? That you keep feeding the data, and we will the brain will understand that data and process the information accordingly. So same way we see that there are various different algorithms or flows that we actually follow to get this precision in deep learning. So that is with the help of a neural network. So in case of neural network, what we see is that there are multiple layers between the input that you have provided to a system, an artificial intelligence based system, the input that you have provided and the output that you get. Between the input and the output, there is a vast network of neurons in this particular system. There are multiple different layers of neurons in this particular system, and then after that we finally see that we get the output. So the algorithm, the hidden layers that we have between the input and the output, that basically becomes the neural network. Similar to what we see in our body, that between the input that the brain gets and the output that you see, between that there is a lot of processing of information that has happened inside the body. So this processing of information has been done with the help of the neurons that are present in our body. So that's why we see that this basically will also be called as the neural network. Now in this particular scenario, when we talk about the neural network, understand how neural network works. So there is an input layer, there is this input layer where you have given the input, and based on the input that you've given, you get the output. But between that there are all these hidden layers that we have, and these hidden layers is where all the processing of information is happening. All the processing basically is done with the help of these hidden layers, where all the decision making will also be done. Let me just give you a very simple small example. All right, suppose I have this. All right, uh, this is a screen that I have, and on this screen if I draw something, let's say I take the white color, and with this white color I am drawing a shape. So I have drawn a shape. Because it is white, if you have not followed the gestures of the pen, you do not know what shape I have drawn. Now if I ask you that you have to find out what shape have I drawn on this screen, how would you find that shape? All right, how would you find that shape? So to find that shape, you are allowed to, let's say that you are allowed to ask me questions. All right, you are allowed to ask me questions, and based on the answers that I give you, you have to predict what kind of shape it was. All right, so you are allowed to ask questions to me, and based on the answer that you get from me, you might get an idea about what kind of shape it is. So what kind of questions would that be? If I ask, let's say, so if there is this figure that I've drawn on the board, and you have to predict what figure I had drawn on the board, what questions would you ask? How many sides does the figure have? Yes. Okay. So let's say this is one. Lokesh, I understood somebody would ask, what figure have you drawn? I'll not answer that. I'll not answer that. You'll have to ask me questions which will give you hints. So, okay, movement involved, fine. So, so, so basically, let's say when we are talking about all these things, lengths of the sides, okay, fine. So let's say if I have to first find out what figure it is, all right. So let's say the first question could be how many sides? First question. So that will become the first layer. So there is an input that we have, all right. There is an input layer that we have. Now from there on, let's say the first layer is number of sides. First layer is number of sides. So the answers could be 1, 2, 3, 4, or let's say more than 4. Correct? So it is 1, 2, 3, 4, or more than 4. So this becomes the first layer. Correct? This becomes the first layer. So let's say I answer that this is 4. So now what happens is that from the input layer, now you have moved to this layer 4. So now you know, okay, fine. Number of sides is 4. So if number of sides is 4, then what shape it could be? It could be any quadrilateral, right? It may not be a square. It can be a square, it can be a rectangle, it can be a rhombus, it can be a parallelogram. In general, we know that it's a quadrilateral. So now that you know that it's a quadrilateral, how would you know what kind of quadrilateral? So there will be the next question, right? The next question could be that all, so as Himanshu, as you've mentioned, that all are all the sides equal. So next question could be all, whether all sides are equal. Correct? Yes, angles at which the sides meet. Correct. So let's say the next question is all sides equal or not. So there are two options only here, either yes or no. So then I say, let's say I say yes. So if I say yes, it moves to the next layer. Yes. Now after this, so when all sides are equal, what shape is it? What shape is it when all sides are equal? Not necessarily square. Yes, square or rhombus, correct? Square or rhombus, not necessarily square. So that's why the next question also is required, that are are all angles equal? Because if all angles are equal, then all these angles are 90 degrees, right? So let's say if I am being asked next whether all angles are equal, and I say yes, so all the sides are also equal, all the angles are also equal, it means that now this goes to the output layer and the output will be a square. Output will be the square. And maybe if you want even the precise figure, you can basically, the next could be the length of the sides. So length of the sides, depending on that, you know the exact square. So this is how, I mean, this is very simplified version of what happens in a neural network. But just to give you an idea how exactly these layers would work, that there will be bunch of algorithms they will be following, and based on the algorithms, based on the inputs and the outputs that we are getting from all these layers in these algorithms, we finally get an output. So this is how it would work. This is how a typical neural network would work. But the things are not as simple as shown in this particular figure or in this particular example. The things are far more complex than that. There are multiple different types of neural networks, and all these neural networks have their own way of functioning, own way of gathering the information and predicting the information. So there are a lot of things, but we don't have to go there. It's much more technical in nature than what's required for your examination. But understand the basics, that this is how a neural network would work. Now, when it comes to artificial intelligence, we understand that this is a basic of artificial intelligence, that how deep learning system and neural networks together would work in making this entire technology take the shape that it has taken today. But when we talk about this artificial intelligence, there are different ways in which we classify artificial intelligence. All right. There are various different ways in which we classify artificial intelligence. So first is the basis of weak versus strong. Weak artificial intelligence versus strong artificial intelligence. So when we say weak artificial intelligence, what we mean is simulated thinking. Simulated thinking. So what is the meaning of simulated thinking? That although the machine or the software appears to be thinking on its own or having its own cognitive abilities, but it's not that it is thinking on its own. It has been programmed to think in a certain manner, right? It has been programmed, because when we are defining the deep learning or machine learning system with the help of a neural network system, we basically are making them work in a certain manner. We are designing them to think in a certain manner. So for example, let's say when you have an image processing software, all right, you have an image processing software, it cannot do translations for you, right? Because it has been programmed to think in a manner that it can process any kind of image, but it has not been trained to translate, let's say, from one language to another. So that's why it has been made to think in a certain manner. So that's why it is called as simulated thinking. So for example, let's say you go to a chatbot, let's say you go to a food delivery app and you say that my order has been not delivered or has been delayed or the food quality is bad. You can get answers from there. First, some automated answers which are based on a weak artificial intelligence, and then maybe some smart answers based on all the patterns of what they actually are seeing there. So that is simulated thinking. That you ask them about what is dark matter, they probably don't know what dark matter is because they haven't been trained to answer general knowledge questions. But when you ask about dark chocolate, perhaps they'll be able to give you an answer because this is where they have been trained. So we understand that this is basically called as simulated thinking, and hence we say that this is weak artificial intelligence. On the other hand, when we say something is strong artificial intelligence, this describes actual thinking. Actual thinking. That now the machine is able to think on its own, which basically can be very dangerous. That you are not training them to think in a certain manner, you have not provided any input, any program for them to think, but they still are able to develop their own cognitive abilities, and they actually are probably not even following the instructions that you are giving them, and this can go in a very negative direction as well. So that's why behaving intelligently, thinking as humans do, and even having a conscience or having a subjective mind. So in all these cases, it can be called as strong artificial intelligence. So that's a strong artificial intelligence is where we see that now actual thinking can be shown as some traits by the machines. The next way to classify is on the basis of narrow versus general artificial intelligence. Narrow artificial intelligence is when the artificial intelligence can do a limited number of tasks or maybe just a single task, whereas general artificial intelligence is where they are capable of doing wide variety of tasks on their own. Then in that case it will be called as general artificial intelligence. So now, right now what we see is that world more or less is in weak artificial intelligence and narrow artificial intelligence. We, any system that you know of, any system that you are using or what you have heard of, more or less all these systems are weak artificial intelligence and narrow artificial intelligence. Because the when if let's say in a given future it so happens that we get into strong and general artificial intelligence, the things can even go out of hand. The things will have a potential to go out of hand and can actually pose even a threat, an existential threat for us, if such a scenario occurs where you have general and strong artificial intelligence working at the same time. So that's why we see that this is where we are. Then there is this new concept called as generative artificial intelligence. Now when we say generative artificial intelligence, we are saying that now artificial intelligence will be able to generate new content or create new content. All right, this is where it will be able to, or it is able to create new content such as images or videos or texts or even music or anything which is indistinguishable from the content created by humans. So this is called as generative AI. Now, where is the difference? What was happening until now? The non generative AI content, we see that Artificial intelligence until now has been more about recognition of patterns, understanding of those patterns, and working on those patterns, but never to create content on its own. Create a piece of music or video or audio or image or even text on its own. It has been about recognition of patterns. This is what we have been discussing until now, that it has been more about recognition of patterns, understanding of those patterns, comprehending those patterns, and maybe just give an output based on every pattern that it has read or understood. But then with generative AI, we see that the things are very different, because now it will be able to create new content. It will be able to give you content on its own. And this is where uh, a lot of new systems have started coming in this place. So, for example, if you see this figure, what is this figure? I mean, uh, there is this very famous painting. This painting is of, yes, Mona Lisa, but Mona Lisa with a twist, right? Yeah, Chapri Mona Lisa, Mona Lisa with a mohawk, right? So now you can see that this image actually has been generated with the help of a certain software, or a certain generative AI. And this generative AI has a capability that it will be able to generate content or generate images on the basis of the description that you have given it. All right, on the basis of the description that you give to this generative AI, it will be able to process that information and give you a picture based on that. So now we see that something like this actually has been made possible. And not only pictures, and it's not only about pictures. We see that whether it is pictures or videos or text, everywhere we see that something like this now has been achieved. So that's why we see that all these things are actually possible. So now what happens next is that, first of all, it can very easily make your life easier, make your job easier, that instead of, let's say, you having to search for certain images, or maybe take a lot of time to create images, you can simply give certain precise instructions, and based on these instructions, it will be able to give you an image. It will be able to generate an image. So generating this image will be a very easy job for this AI. So that is basically what we have seen today, that all these things now are actually possible, that they'll be able to generate image on their own. So overall we see that this is something which is possible, and this image actually has been created with the help of such a generative AI called as DAL-E. So this DAL-E basically is um, an image generating generative AI, where you simply have to just give the instruction, or just give an instruction about the image, and it will be able to generate the image based on the instructions that we've given. The more precise you are in giving the instruction, the better will be the image, more precise will be the image that you get out of it. So that's why it's all possible today, that you can just go to DAL-E and you can say that generate an image with me sitting in the balcony of a resort which is in Himachal Pradesh, with clouds floating around. And so all these things, I mean, whatever description you want, you can give, and it will be able to generate an image based on all these all these instructions, or the information that you have given to this software. Similarly, we see that there are others. For example, one which has also been here is deepfake. Now with deepfake, what we see is that it is able to generate video. It is able to generate it video, whereas DALL-E is about generating audio. Sorry, generating image. All right, generating image. So with deepfake, there were a couple of videos that had become very popular, where with the help of deepfake, a video of Obama and also a video of Putin was actually created. Where when you go and look at that particular video, you'll see that Obama is saying something. All right, Obama is saying something, and you would be able to even see that there are lip movements happening, and it would look like Obama actually is saying those words. But they were deep fakes. They were videos that were generated with the help of generative AI called as deep fake. So that's why we see that this is actually possible, this is doable today. And there are so many things that can be done in all these cases, and the things can go in a very negative direction and maybe a very positive direction as well. So deepfake videos can be used to, let's say, to just spread fake information, that, let's say, or maybe it can be used in a very very negative light. So it's just that you have to identify, you just have to train the system, and it will be able to create that video. So we understand that all these things are possible. One of the greatest things that we have seen here in terms of generative AI has been chat gpt. This is an example of what ChatGPT could do. That I went to ChatGPT and I gave it an instruction that give me a script for a 10 minutes lecture on artificial intelligence. And look at what happened next. That it very easily was able to generate content where a 10-minute lecture could be delivered on artificial intelligence. So as you can see, that good afternoon everyone. Today we are going to talk about one of the most fascinating and rapidly growing fields of computer science, that is artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, or AI for short, is the development of computer systems that can perform tasks that usually require human intelligence, such as visual perception, speech recognition, decision making, language translation, etc. So as you can see that so easily it was able to generate this uh, lecture. It was able to generate a 10-minute lecture. I'm not saying that I've taken it from here. It was just an example for you to see that what can be done. And today what we see is that chat gpt, last year it was introduced in November 2022. We see that chat gpt was introduced, where you can simply go to chat gpt, you can just type any question and get answer on it. You can get answer on it. But it's very different from how you use a search engine like Google. Because in search engine like Google, if you are very specific, then you may not get a lot of results. You have to be very broad in whatever instructions you give. And there you then get a lot of links, that you just search for something, and you will see that there are a lot of links that you will get. That if you, let's say, just want to check the score of the match, so you'll just go there and say India versus West Indies day 3 scores, or cricket scores, and you'll see that there are a lot of website links that will come. You'll go to one of those websites, and then you will read about it. You want to, let's say, read on artificial intelligence, you just type artificial intelligence, and you'll see that a lot of different websites is what you will get. With chat gpt the things are different. You, if you are very precise, you get a better answer. You will get a very precise better answer. It will filter through all the websites in the world that it has been trained with. So with chat gpt or with any generative ai, the thing is that all of these systems, they have been trained with a large amount of data, very very large amount of data. Probably all the websites and everything that exists, pdfs or reports or publications and everything that exists online, it has been trained with all that data. So that's why it actually what happens is that it actually has all this data, it actually knows all this data, and hence it is able to skim through all the data and is able to generate fresh content, generate original content. And it's not just giving you the link through to any kind of website. So in that case, what happens is that it makes your job much easier, in that sense that it can make your job much easier. So initially we see that ChatGPT version 3 was released last year, then ChatGPT version 3.5 was released this year, and today there is ChatGPT version 4, which is also called as GPT-4. So GPT-4 version has been released. This is right now the latest version that we have. Now with this latest version, we see that the scope of its use goes just goes beyond just questions and answers. So until 3.5, it was just about questions and answers, that you just give it uh, give it questions and it will give you answers. So you just type the questions, get your answers. But with GPT-4, we see that the things are very very different. That today, for example, let's say you have to go to um, let's say, okay, let's say there is a huge editorial in the Hindu, in today's newspaper. You don't have enough time to read it. what you can do is go to chat gpt. All right, go to chat gpt. There is a plugin, there is something called as plugin. So you just go and enable the plugin in chat gpt or gpt-4, and then there is one plugin called as link reader. There is one plugin called as link reader. So you enable that plugin link reader. You just type, give me a summary of this article, and give the link of that article, the url of that article. With the help of link reader, it will be able to just summarize it. You want to be more precise, you write, give me a summary of this article in 100 words. It will give you. You want to be more precise, you write, give me a summary of this article in 100 words with all the data that was presented in that editorial, present in those 100 words. You give a very precise instruction, which is also called as a prompt, to this chat gpt. It will give you. How much time did it take? Probably just 2 minutes for you to just type in all this information, and within next 2 minutes just read everything, and you don't have to read the entire article. So this is how things can change. If I wanted to make a slide for me, a presentation for me to deliver a lecture, I can simply go and ask, what are the topics to be covered in an artificial intelligence lecture if I am delivering the lecture for people who may not have a background in artificial intelligence, and I have to cover certain areas of this. And then what will happen next is that it will give you a set of ppts, that okay, this should be your first slide, this should be your second slide, this should be a third slide, and so on. And all these things will be done for me next 2 minutes. Then I can type, okay, what should be the information on the first slide, give me the information for the first slide. It will give it. Done. It probably would have taken me just 5 minutes to get all these information, process all this information, and be done with it. So the things can become so quick. So that is why we see that, one way, I mean, we understand that it is opening a lot of new avenues which were completely unheard of until now. But at the same time, look at the problems that it can create, right? Look at the problem that it can create. And uh, that's why we understand that this can actually go in a very negative direction in terms of the people who are actually doing this job. That if, let's say, I'm saying that gpt-4 can do this job for me in a minute's time, then why do I need people who would create content being a part of the academic team at, let's say, a company like this? The things can go in a very different manner. The problem right now that we have with gpt-4 or gpt 3.5 and all these versions is that they are not very correct. They give a lot of information that could be wrong. So you cannot rely on the information that is being given by them, because you don't know how they would process the information. Unless you are using the information from an official source, you do not know how they would process the information. And many a times they are wrong. And you can just try it, that you ask for, let's say, some kind of information, and the next question you say that the information that you have given above is does not seem to be correct, please recheck and regenerate the response. It would regenerate the information and maybe change some of the information that it had given in the first question. So actually all these things are happening right now, that it is not very precise, and you cannot completely rely on it for any kind of work that you're doing. Yes, you can take the help, no doubt, but you cannot rely on it end to end for 100% of your work. So that's why we see that there are all these things. But you also have to understand that it was introduced in November 2022. It hasn't been even 1 year since the time it was actually introduced to the world. So imagine the shape it can take in the next 5 years, the course that it can take in the next 5 years, the way it has been functioning, the way it has been progressing every given day. So that's why we understand that there are all these problems also that it can lead to, but at the same time it can really make the entire job easier for anyone who wants to work. So that's why we see that there are too many things that can be done. And now, so chat gpt is one of them. We see that there are other types of generative ai also. There are a lot of generative ai. Google, for example, now is working on a project called as bard. So bard is going to be Google's generative ai. Already it has been introduced, a beta version has been introduced. It's not as great as chat gpt right now, but very soon I'm very sure that Google being Google, I'm very sure that they'll be able to uh, work quickly on it and make a lot better open I mean lot better system than the open AI that ChatGPT is. Similarly, we see that Microsoft also in its Bing search, it had integrated GPT, that it was able to generate the data with regards to this. So they already, so we see that there are all these systems and all these companies which are working very aggressively in all these cases. And because generative AI is the next segment of AI, or is the next level of AI compared to what we had seen until last year. So overall, that's why with all these things considered, we understand that we need to understand all these concepts very well, understand the value of all these concepts, where we come to a concept called as super intelligence. That all the fears that I'm discussing with you, the fears become real with super intelligence. So super intelligence is a term that is used to refer to general and strong AI to a point which at which it surpasses human intelligence if it ever does. Meaning that we are talking about a scenario in the future where there is a possibility that general and strong artificial intelligence work together. And once that happens in any AI based system, if it is having general and strong AI at the same time, then in that case, first and foremost, it has its own cognitive abilities, it has its own thinking abilities, and it is not a slave of your thoughts, right? It is not a slave of your programs anymore. It will be able to think on itself and it can think anything that it wants. And because of general AI, it will be able to do a lot of tasks on its own. So now, let's say as the first task, it wants itself to be freed of any kind of human interaction or any kind of human intervention. Then probably it will start working towards it. Just understand that this will be a system I mean connected to the internet, can do anything, can cause disruptions, and probably don't know what it can do. So that's why in these kind of scenarios, we are talking about a system where the system has gone past the human intelligence. And this is where all the things that movies have shown you, all the things that TV has shown you over the years, or science fiction novels have told you about over the years, all those fears would become a reality. So that's why we understand that all these things can happen. Although the scientists believe that super intelligence may never be possible, because ultimately we are the ones creating the systems and managing the systems. So there are chances that a system which is super intelligent might never happen. But we, when it comes to science, never say never. We should never say that it will not happen, it cannot happen, because it's just a very nascent stage. I mean, how many years since you have been hearing about uh, artificial intelligence? Maybe just last 5 6 years, that's it. Maybe 10 years if you were early follower of artificial intelligence, right? But largely it has been just last 5 years. So only in 5 years we have seen that things have changed so rapidly in so many ways. So give it time and you'll see that the entire world would have a completely different order with artificial intelligence. So that's why we also need to understand the problems that it can create, so that it does not become a challenge for us in the future. So looking at the applications of artificial intelligence, goes without saying there are so many ways in which artificial intelligence can be helpful. For example, if we consider healthcare, there are multiple ways in which healthcare can get some help from artificial intelligence. So drug development, medical diagnosis, dosage error reduction, cancer research, healthcare plans, virtual nursing assistance, fraud detection, cyber security, gene editing, robot assisted surgeries, health monitoring, wearables. We understand that there are rare disease and diagnostics and treatment. There are so many ways in which artificial intelligence can help. So, for example, in drug development or even in the vaccine development, we have seen that even in vaccine development, this is something which is very, very useful. So, it can actually be used in all these cases. Similarly, so for example, let's say if you consider COVID-19 vaccine, then in case of COVID-19 vaccine, we know that COVID-19 vaccine gets its helps from artificial intelligence. Why we were able to bring out the vaccine so quickly this time? Normally, if you see, any vaccine development would take maybe a decade's time. 8 to 10 years of time, if not more, for this vaccine development to happen. There have been cases that where it has taken more than 20 years or even 30 years of time. Compared to that, the COVID-19 vaccines were available to us within 6 to 9 months of time. Correct. This all could happen because of a lot of factors. Advancements in biotechnology, major contributor. Advancements in gene understanding and gene editing, major contributor. At the same time, artificial intelligence also a major contributor in this kind of a drug or a vaccine development, because now vaccine development could happen much quicker than we could have imagined. All the data that we are collecting could be processed much faster with the help of artificial intelligence. So that's why data processing and disease modeling, all these things could be done much faster with the help of artificial intelligence, and that becomes the reason why vaccines were available so quickly. Similarly, we see that in cancer research, in many of the other diseases which are more or less non-curable as of now. In all these cases, also, we see that we are making the use of artificial intelligence so that we have a better understanding of the disease, and so that we can think of a plan for the future. That how exactly can we battle it out? How exactly can we understand that disease and launch something that will help us solve that problem? So that's why we see that there are all these things that can be done with the help of uh, uh, artificial intelligence in healthcare. Another very, very important application is agriculture. That in agriculture also we see that there are a lot of ways in which artificial intelligence can help. So, for example, in crop yield prediction and price forecast. So, understanding what is the productivity, what is the value in the market, what is the demand in the market, based on that what the prices could be, the prediction of the prices, and a basic understanding to be given to the farmers. All these things are possible with the help of artificial intelligence. Similarly, we see that even in spraying we can make the use of it, that smart spraying which is very precise in its nature, of insecticides or herbicides, etc. All these things are possible. Then predictive insights, basically understanding when to sow the seeds, when the agriculture has to happen, what is the prediction of the weather, what kind of soil to be used, all these things, when what would be the exact time according to the temperature conditions, rainfall conditions, etc., that when should a farmer start sowing the seeds. All these things are doable. Similarly, we have agricultural robots where we see that large harvestings can be done with the help of these robotic systems. Similarly, in crop and soil monitoring, we can make the use, and then in disease diagnosis as well, we can make the use. So, in case of agriculture, also, we understand that there are multiple different ways in which artificial intelligence will be very, very useful. Apart from this, there are many, many application areas. For example, in the finance sector, also it can be very useful, because finance sector is more about, let's say, the budgeting, understanding the product, the present and the future of the product, and allocation of the funds accordingly. So all these things can be done with the help of artificial intelligence. Similarly, in the legal sector, let's say there are contracts, right? So let's say there are contracts, reading the contracts can become much easier. That you can feed the system to artificial you can feed the document to artificial intelligence based system, and it will be able to understand the keywords. It will be able to it would be able to read the contracts very quickly, and it will be able to give you insights on those contracts, so that you are not missing out on anything. In the manufacturing sector also, in the automation, in the assembly lines, not only that, even in energy optimization. Even in energy optimization, we see that we can make the use of artificial intelligence. So here also it will be very, very useful. Similarly, in making intelligent robots, something that we had discussed, that we need AI in robots, right? We need AI in robots. So that also basically becomes one of the ways in which it can be used. Then in gaming, because gaming is all about understanding the customer, understanding how the customer plays, or what what the customer finds to be difficult, what is easy for them. Based on that, we see that all these things can be introduced. So biggest of the games, if let's say you are playing PUBG for example, so how you proceed, what you find difficult, when are you failing, when are you succeeding, all these information are also being captured by the company, so that they can have a better game for you, they can have a better setup for you, so that they can immerse you more in that game. So that's why we see that in the gaming industry also it will be useful. In cyber security, in case of cyber security also it becomes very useful, because it is able to uh, AI will be able to predict what are the possible chances of attacks, or what are the possible pathways of attack in any given computing system. So that's why it will be useful here. Then in building smart cities and infrastructure, so here also understanding the requirements, based on that what kind of infrastructure is required, how to optimize energy, how to optimize the traffic, all these things can be done. For example, optimizing traffic is already being tried in Delhi. Optimizing traffic using artificial intelligence. So this is something that as a pilot already the government is trying to use in Delhi. So that so all these things will be a very very important thing for the future. We discussed about the medicine, we discussed about agricultural sector. Then in the business sector also, to better understand the product, then even their market placement and where they are, and the financials. So all these things can actually be read and done with the help of artificial intelligence. And then even in the education sector, that we'll see that slowly in the education sector also this has started coming in. That for example, understanding the student, understanding the patterns of the student, behavior of the student, and based on that, look at each and every student in a very different way, in a manner that they'll be able to get the help. So there are, I mean, and these are just a few sectors to name, right? These are just a few sectors to name, and the list does not stop here. There are so many ways in which artificial intelligence today has been helping, and in the future, it will be able to help. Look at this question. This question was asked in your paper. Just read the question and then I'll launch the poll also for you. I hope you have read the question. I'm launching the poll. Please mark your answer. Hmm. So as I see, 5% A, 26% B, 5% C, and 63% D. All right. So let me discuss this with you. With the present state of development, artificial intelligence can effectively do which of the following? First is bring down electricity consumption in industrial units. Bring down electricity consumption in industrial units. We discussed about this, that in manufacturing, energy optimization can be done. So energy optimization is actually possible. So basically what happens here is that understanding what part of manufacturing plant needs energy, when does it need energy, when to supply more energy to certain part, when to switch off that energy, how to save that energy and optimize all these things. So all these basically are actually possible. And yes, we can say that this is correct. Create meaningful short stories and songs. Now this is tricky because the correct answer given in the official answer was 1, 3, and 4. Now this is when the question was asked. This was correct. I mean, I'm not saying that this was a wrong answer. This is the official answer, and this is correct. All right, this is correct from that perspective. Creating meaningful short stories and songs was not possible when the question was asked. The year this question was asked, it was not possible. Today it is. You go to chat gpt, tell it what you want to write, what subject you want to write, what are the emotions you want in that story or that poem. It will be able to generate content. So it will be able to generate a meaningful short story or a song today. It was not possible then. So that's why from the perspective of when it was asked, it is correct. It was wrong, but today it is possible. Today possible with chat gpt. Then disease diagnosis. We discussed that disease diagnosis can be done, and medical field, it tries to understand the pattern, the behavior, the movements, everything. And yes, it can be done. Text to speech conversion. This also has been done already. A lot of softwares are using it, so that also is correct. Fifth is wireless transmission of electrical energy. Now, first of all, see, whenever electrical energy is getting transmitted, uh, wirelessly, it's very, very difficult. It's very complex. So it's through the wires that you get all the electricity. But even if, let's say, even if we are making wireless transmission of electrical energy possible, there is no AI involved here. It's not the role of artificial intelligence. It, even if so happens, it will happen because of properties of the electromagnetic radiations. It will not happen because of AI. So in any case, 5 cannot be correct. So I think 2019 this question was asked. So 2019 B is correct. That is 1, 3, and 4. But if I'm asking this question today, then in that case, I would say the correct answer should be 1, 2, 3, and 4. But statement number 5 in any way is wrong. All right. Statement number 5 in any way is wrong. So that is what we have here. So this question, so just see the beauty of science and how quickly the things change, that within 3 years of time, the answer to this question changes. Because look at the question, and that's why, because many of you marked D, read the question carefully always. What does the question say? With the present state of development, with the present state of development, artificial intelligence can effectively do which of the following? Right? Effectively, what can it do with the present state of development? It is not talking about the future of artificial intelligence and what could be done or what can be done and what would be done with the help of artificial intelligence. Right? This is talking about the present state of development. What actually is possible or is being done today. So that's why always remember to read the questions well so that you don't confuse in these kind of things. And that's why the answer here will be B. Now, talking about India, and where do we see India in its entire mix of artificial intelligence? So, first and foremost, when you look at some certain data with regards to artificial intelligence, we see that slowly and steadily the government also has started adopting artificial intelligence. Most importantly, we see that in India, defense has been one sector where a lot of research has been happening, a lot of studies have been happening. So, there are all these areas where we try to understand, where we see that there is a huge potential that defense has, whether it is border management, whether it is surveillance, whether it is internal security, whether it is the placement of the aircrafts or missiles or anything. We see that everywhere artificial intelligence will be very, very useful. Then we have seen that a lot of private companies, they have started working very aggressively with artificial intelligence. They are also collaborating with the academia, with the people who know what artificial intelligence is, whether engineers or scientists or anyone here. they are also finding their opportunities in all these sectors, correct? So that's why this is also something which we see today. Then, according to a Niti Ayog report says that by the year 2035, India would add, or AI would add, total of $957 billion to the Indian GDP, and hence it would increase India's GDP by 1.3%. So that's why it actually is saying that, look, in India there is a lot of development supposed to happen, and it will be able to generate a lot more uh, goods and services, and hence the GDP of the country will be able to increase further. Then after that, one report that was published, we saw that India is among the top 10 countries in the world as far as the AI based specialists are concerned. That India has a large workforce that knows how to work with AI. So that's why India has a huge potential here. Similarly, what we see is a important development that CBSE had announced that artificial intelligence would become one of the elective subjects in class 9. That if you want, you can take uh, artificial intelligence as an elective subject, as an extra subject in class 9th. So this is a very, very important development, because in terms of robotics, this is one of the issues that we discussed, that there is no education at the school level, at the college level, unless you are deeply specialized already, you have no idea about robotics. But that has changed with artificial intelligence. That with artificial intelligence, we see that you have this option, that uh, you can study artificial intelligence even in class 9th. And if you like it, if you, let's say, start uh, generating that interest, then maybe tomorrow you become a workforce, you become a very good brain in terms of artificial intelligence. Then after that, we saw that IIT Hyderabad became the first college to give a full-fledged BTech degree in AI. Apart from that, we have then seen that there are other government and private colleges also that have started doing this, that they are giving a degree, a BTech degree in AI and machine learning and all these concepts. So we see that there are all these developments that have been happening, and after that, this basically has been developing. Now, when it comes to the possible areas for AI, when it comes to India, we see that there is again an immense potential that we have. There are a lot of different sectors, there are a lot of different ways in which we might be able to leverage or use artificial intelligence. So for example, in Digital India Mission, it can be made a part of the Digital India Mission, and we would be able to understand the digitization of the economy much better, and will be able to work with artificial intelligence in implementing a lot of things that we want in all these areas. Then after that, targeted delivery of services, schemes and subsidies. This is very, very crucial for the government, and government can actually make the use of artificial intelligence in understanding the demography, in understanding the population, and ensuring that they are getting their due, they are getting the help from all these subsidies and schemes, etc., whatever was intended for them. Similarly, we see that it is something that can be used in smart border surveillance and monitoring. That AI based systems will be very, very effective in surveillance, especially in the border areas, in detection, in the sensing, or even the satellite images being used in a real time basis. All these things become very, very crucial here. Similarly, we discussed when we started about weather forecasting, that how in weather forecasting also it can be used. And we already see that in weather forecasting, we have a lot better system in place, and we see that the precision and the accuracy has increased a lot. Similarly, in terms of road safety and crime data analysis, there also we see that it will be very, very useful. Uh, in disaster management, it could be used. The processing of the information can be much faster, and the mitigation strategies could be developed much faster than what we do today. So that's why there are chances that we'll be able to work with all these things as well. Then in counter insurgency and patrolling operations, so there also we can make the use of artificial intelligence to be much better targeted, and we so that we are very precise in all these operations. automating the government processes, studying the ancient literature upon medicines, and ultimately governance. And this is very, very crucial. I mean, this can be a direct question in your mains examination. How does artificial intelligence help in governance? Or how can artificial intelligence help in governance? So there are various factors of governance. There are various aspects of governance. So in each and every aspect of governance, we'll see that artificial intelligence would have a very, very important role to play. Take it as an assignment. Take it as an assignment, write an answer. Just think. There are many points that you will come across. I don't even have to tell you where exactly artificial intelligence can help in governance, but there are a lot of ways where it can be. And that's why I don't want to give you the points. Just think on your own, write answers, and please submit. Please write answers and submit. It's an easy question, just that you'll have to give some thought to it. You'll come across a lot of points that actually can be written in a question like this. So that's why we see that there are multiple areas where we might see that artificial intelligence will help in governance. Now, lastly, the challenges, where the problems are. First, largely we see that it is being driven by the private sector. Whatever artificial intelligence is being used today, it is some company that is using it, right? It's not the government largely, or it is not the government processes where artificial intelligence is being used in a very large scale. We see that it's largely all the companies, and every company for its own benefit, wherever it finds that it will be able to uh, do better as a company or generate more revenue or optimize the resources or whatever they want to do, all these things can be done largely with the help of artificial intelligence. So that's why this private sector has been using it to its own advantage, for its own good. It has been using it. Then, so that is one major problem that we have right now. We would need more aspects of governance also to start using artificial intelligence. Then the problem of education system not being updated, that there are chapters here and there on artificial intelligence, but we need the growth to happen faster. Even in terms of, even let's say when we say that CBSE has introduced artificial intelligence as an elective subject in class 9th, how many schools do you think are actually offering this course? If you just go around, you ask maybe your school or maybe the school in your neighborhood, you probably will even find that the schools do not even know that there is an elective subject that they can give, and CBSE is actually offering them. And even if they know, all right, even if they know that, okay, fine, we can actually offer artificial intelligence as an elective subject, even then there's no guarantee that they'll be able to do something very well there, because you also need the faculty. You know, need people who can actually teach artificial intelligence. But now, this being a growing field, people who know about artificial intelligence are working in some kind of industry, right? They're working some industry as an engineer or something. So finding the faculty also will be a challenge, even if they want to introduce this subject. Then the debate of poverty versus technology. Now, this is a big problem. Many a times, and not really a problem, but rather I would say a misinterpretation. The misinterpretation is that poverty versus technology. The context of this debate itself is the problem, that we cannot pitch poverty against technology. Because what happens is, many a times it is argued that why do you need to invest so much on artificial intelligence or space technology or nuclear technology, etc. First feed the people. First feed your people who are not able to get uh, the required amount of nutrition, instead of just wasting your money on artificial intelligence or wasting your money on space technology and so on. But we need to understand that it's never a versus thing. It's never artificial intelligence, or let's say technology in general, technology against poverty. No, technology will be an enabler, right? Technology has to be seen as an enabler to pull people out of poverty. and thus this helps in a long term growth for the economy. So that's why we need to understand that when it comes to technology, technology cannot be seen to be anti people or anti progress or something like this. It actually helps a lot because it leads to long term growth. That if somebody says that India has wasted a lot of money on space technology, it has not, because with the help of space technology you have better forecast, you have better weather monitoring, you have better agricultural monitoring. We have been able to understand our agriculture better and use it to our advantage. It has overall helped the Indian society altogether to grow. So similarly, artificial intelligence also in the coming future will help in a lot of different sectors. We just need to figure out, the government needs to figure out where they want to invest their money when it comes to artificial intelligence, and we'll see that it will have a very important positive impact on this Indian society. But then there is this fear that there can be a decrease in demand for human labor, and rightly so. We do understand that there are chances that it could lead to a situation where people are losing jobs. We already see that there are so many technology based companies, the biggest of the tech companies in the world. They have been laying off people from their companies. They have been letting go of a lot of people because of how artificial intelligence has grown. A lot of their requirements for human minds or manual work happening in those fields are gone now. So that's why there are all these problems that we have, and that's we have to address all these problems. Although now there is a different side of the coin in this particular case also, that what when we look at the historic data of when new technology appears, a new technology is introduced to the world, we always have seen that initially there has been a decrease in the job market, but then we see that the same technology actually uplifts the job market, and a lot more new employment opportunities are created. Something similar was a fear, the fear that we have with artificial intelligence today. Something similar was a fear in early 2000s when computers were being introduced, because with the introduction of computers, it was being argued that the computers will just take away all the jobs, or whatever manual work was happening until now, the computer will be able to do. So then after that, computers will just eat away a lot of jobs. And that actually happened. That if you look at a graph, for example, I'm just drawing a rough graph for you, that this is year versus employment. So, and this is the figure for US. And what we have observed with the US figure is that this graph goes something like this. All right, this graph goes something like this. Now, what does this graph signify? That initially there was a slope like this, right? There was a slope like this, and there is a dip that we see, and this dip that we have is the year 2000. So what happened? Number of job opportunities, they dropped all of a sudden, but then we see that it rises further. It rises further, and now it becomes steeper. So more jobs actually were created because of computers. But even in analyzing this data at macro level, it sounds that fine, computer did a good job. But there are a lot of people who lost their jobs. We don't know about this dip. You can't say that whether in this dip, whether the people who lost their jobs, were they the ones who got their jobs back? Maybe there are new employment opportunities being created, and the people who have lost their jobs are getting nothing. And this is what actually could lead to a lot of financial crisis for these people who have who have actually lost their jobs. So that's why we don't know the direction in which these things can go. We have to really plan a lot better, and this is where something becomes very very crucial, that the probably the government will have to work upon, and this is skill development. The only thing that can save people in these kind of situations is skill development, because people who are skilled, people who know how to get the employment in some sector or the other, they would not be affected here. So that's why skill development largely is required for the Indian workforce, so that they are not in these kind of situations. Then it might even lead to existential risks for the entire humanity. We do not know the direction it can go. We do not know what will happen, and whether whatever the films have been saying us that the artificial intelligence will take over the world, we don't really know that even partially also something like this can happen. And it may also lead to moral degradation in the society. So in this particular scenario, the problem is that many a times now what is especially happening is that you interact a lot more with your machine, with the machines around you, than you actually talk to people. For example, your mobile phone is a prime example, that your mobile phone is probably the most precious thing that you have in your life. And I don't know whether you love your mobile phones more or whether you love your friends more. So unfortunately, we see that these kind of things have been happening where uh, the machines are really dictating our lives more than we using them for some kind of purpose, right? So that's why this is a scenario which is a real scenario that we see today, and it will happen more, because ultimately these are the systems that are going to be built in a manner that they can automate a lot of systems and services. So human intervention may not be required, and human interaction may not even happen. So with the limited human interaction, we see that we start to lose respect for the other person, just because we haven't interacted and don't have that empathy in our minds. So ultimately there are all these things that can happen, and that's why there are so many fears that we have with regards to artificial intelligence. So that's why the second half of the chapter that we have discussed, it's more about the mains examination, the challenges, the problems, the possibilities, the future, all these things. And there are some basic concepts that they can ask in the prelims examination. So this is about this chapter of artificial intelligence. If you have any questions, please let me know. And then after that, we'll take the lunch break. And after the lunch break, we'll be back with the next chapter, that is health and diseases. Bard you have asked about. So Bard basically is the AI by Google. I mean, the generative AI by Google, which is very similar to what Chat GPT is. How to use Chat GPT? So how to use Chat GPT? Basically, uh, there is a website, chat.openai.com. You have to just go to that website, log in from your account, and just type the questions, start getting your answers. Either zombie apocalypse or AI war, which has more chances? I hope none of the above, but we don't know what is in store for the future. You can actually go to ChatGPT and ask that question and see what wonderful answers you get. All right. So let's take a break here. There will be a new link that will be available to you at 3:40. So we'll resume the session at 3:40 p.m. We'll resume the session at 3:40 p.m. with the next chapter, that is health and diseases.